They did not speak his name in her father's court. They did not speak his given name in the other conquered provinces. They spoke of him the way people speak of storms that move too fast across maps, quietly, with calculation. They whispered instead a title which carried like a wound, the Emperor of Pain. It was not the name he chose, it was a name the defeated required. He allowed it. To him, names mattered less than outcomes, and outcomes had always belonged to him. He watched from the high tower windows of his court, seeing the procession of wagons carrying tribute to him proceed down the cobblestone road outside of the walls of his imperial capital, carrying her to him. As a teenager, she had once laughed at him, rejected him. Years ago, beneath the orchard trees, when he had stood too close and spoken too boldly, "You presume too much," she had told him. "I presume correctly," he had replied. He had arrogantly looked at her as if she were already his. Age and experience had given him wisdom. Now he understood that arrogance was what had angered her. That was what frightened her. In response, she had rejected his suit and dismissed him, a mere nobleman with ambition too large for his station. She did not realize her rejection had struck flint. No longer the orchard boy, the man he had become sat on a throne carved from black stone, and she rode toward him as tribute.
Please like, subscribe, and share to support more of these stories.
Carved from obsidian and etched with gold, the doors of the imperial throne room opened like a wound on silent hinges. Light from 100 braziers trembled against vaulted ceilings, painted with scenes of conquest. Armies breaking beneath banners of black and crimson, cities kneeling beneath a crowned figure with eyes like embers. Silence poured over her as she entered. She walked alone, no family to present her, no brother, no father. They lay in graves beneath earth that once belonged to her bloodline. Princess Gwendolen of Calmera wore mourning white trimmed in silver thread, the fabric austere rather than bridal. The gown fell in clean, severe lines from her shoulders, its high collar fastening at her throat like armor disguised as silk. No jewels adorned her save a single ring bearing the crest of her fallen house. She had determined that she would not arrive at this villain's court glittering. She would arrive intact. It was more than he deserved. Her kingdom lay behind her in a fragile state of survival, spared by ink and her unwilling consent to be there. The throne rose at the far end of the hall, carved from black basalt veined with gold. Upon it sat the Conqueror who had broken her kingdom and spared it in the same breath. He wore imperial black heavy velvet cut close across broad shoulders, stitched with gold thread that traced sigils of dominion along the sleeves. A crown of darkened steel rested upon his head, its points not ornate but blade-like, rising in disciplined symmetry. It suited him, he who had killed so many in his pursuit of power. He did not lean against the throne, he occupied it. Now she crossed the hall, spine straight, grief folded into dignity. She reached the prescribed distance and lowered herself into what might be called a curtsy. Not deeply, not even fully, most assuredly, not willingly. As tribute, protocol demanded the stone beneath her knees. nothing less. Her pride forced her to remain upright. She would endure him. She would give him duty. She would never give him the satisfaction of submission. The hall waited. He did not speak immediately. He let silence measure her. Then stand. The word carried without effort. It did not echo. It settled. She rose and lifted her gaze finally to the face of this conqueror who had demanded her as tribute. Recognition dawned in her expression before she could restrain it. The crown did not disguise him, it sharpened him. The voice was lower than she remembered, richer, tempered by something vast and merciless. He had grown into himself the way iron grows into a blade. It sharpened him. Time had carved away the restless impatience of youth, leaving something refined, deliberate, and dangerous. His jaw had hardened. His shoulders broadened. His presence filled the space not with noise, but with inevitability. But his eyes, the orchard boy remained in the eyes. Those had not changed. Still intense, still unbearably focused. They were the same eyes that had once studied her beneath orchard boughs heavy with early summer fruit. The same gaze that had unsettled her at 15 when he had stood too close and declared with insufferable certainty, "I will rule." She laughed then. A princess could afford laughter. "You presume too much," she had told him. "I presume correctly," he had answered. Now that same gaze met hers from the throne of a conquered continent. He studied her in silence. Slowly, a smile curved his mouth. "You remember." Her spine remained straight. She swallowed. Yes, her voice did not waver. She would not allow it. He descended the dais with measured steps. The soft thud of boot against stone, the only sound in the chamber, rhythmic, controlled. As though he had rehearsed this moment for years, he stopped before her, towering over her, looking down upon her and locking her eyes to his. "I am told," he said evenly, "that you intended to enter a nunnery." The faintest flicker of surprise crossed her face. "I intended to remove myself from the reach of the empire." His brow lifted a fraction. "And yet, you are finally here." Anger flared hot in her chest. "And yet," she replied, "only because you wrote a letter threatening my people. I am here to save my people and for no other reason." A ripple of tension moved through the court at the reference. He did not look away from her. He remembered the letter clearly. The letter read, "Refuse again, and one village will burn each dawn until your answer changes. No fury, no insult, only arithmetic." He leaned toward her, close enough that warmth radiated through the silk of her gown. "You chose wisely," he said. "I spared them." "You threatened them," she ground out. "I offered you a choice," he stated smoothly. "I chose survival," she said in a harsh whisper. His gaze dropped to her mouth for a fraction too long. "You chose correctly." His voice softened, though it lost none of its command. Her nails pressed into her palms. "You threatened children. I threatened refusal, not defiance." His response was glib. "You forced my hand." He tilted his head slightly, studying her as if she were a riddle he had already solved. His gaze traveled slowly over her face, cataloguing every controlled breath. "I forced nothing," he said softly. "You could have watched the fires." Her breath hitched despite herself. He saw it. His expression shifted imperceptibly, not triumph, recognition. You were never defiant, Gwendolen. It was the first time he had spoken her name. The court did not miss it. She did not flinch at the familiarity. You were refusal. You chose control, he murmured, even when you pretend otherwise. She remembered the orchard, the heat of his stare, the way her pulse had betrayed her before she knew why. You were arrogant, she whispered. I was certain, came his reply. You were beneath me, she said quietly. The faintest shadow flickered across his expression, gone as swiftly as it came. Not anymore. The words did not carry cruelty, they carried fact. He stepped closer, too close, and the air between them thinned. The court held its breath, but he lowered his voice so that only she could hear. You told me ambition without power was foolish. His gaze never left hers. His gloved hand lifted, pausing just short of her jaw, granting her space to recoil. She did not. I corrected the imbalance, he said softly. She felt it then. Not fear, not entirely. Something warmer, more dangerous. The ghost of the orchard boy standing too near. Her breath betrayed her, shallow for a single treacherous heartbeat, he noticed. He studied her face, searching. There, he whispered. She stiffened. What? Her chin lifted instinctively. That look. His fingers brushed beneath her chin slowly, giving her every opportunity to recoil. He lifted her face a fraction higher. You used to tremble, he said quietly. I do not tremble, she replied. His thumb traced the edge of her jaw, measured, intent. Not from fear. The orchard, the scent of apples, the way he had looked at her, not as a princess to flatter, but as something already chosen. His thumb had brushed her pulse. Heat flared up her arm, uninvited and remembered. Her breath betrayed her again. Heat crept up her throat, infuriating. He smiled slightly. You rejected a nobleman, he murmured. Do you reject your emperor as well? The court had gone silent as winter glass. She met his gaze. She would not look away. She would not, perhaps. The word was brittle. A flicker of something dark and approving lit his eyes. He leaned closer, close enough that the firelight in the throne room caught in his eyes like embers. Say it, he said. His voice dropped to a whisper meant only for her. Refuse me again. A pause. If you wish. The room felt smaller, air thinner. Say the word, he continued softly, his breath warm against her ear, and I will set the sky on fire. The threat was not loud, not dramatic. It was intimate, devotional. He would burn kingdoms. He would spare them. He would reshape continents. All because she once dared to laugh at him. Because she once looked at him without awe. And because some reckless part of her had burned beneath that gaze long before he wore a crown. He drew back slightly, not retreating, waiting for her answer, for her surrender, for the moment she realized she had forged him, and now she stood before what she made. He dismissed the court without turning. The great doors shut behind them with finality. Gwendolen followed him through a hidden door behind the throne, down a long path of twisting hallways until she was lost within the bowels of the obsidian fortress, knowing she would never find her way back out without help. Finally, they ended up at an iron-banded door set into obsidian walls, guarded by two twin giants who bowed their heads respectfully to them as they opened the door for the emperor and her to enter. His private chamber beyond was not decadent. It was restrained stone walls, iron sconces, a low hearth, tended by a young servant boy until it was burning with steady amber light. Two maids brought in covered platters of food and pitchers of wine and water and sat them on a table next to a larger, cluttered table. The only sign that a person of royalty resided in the chamber was a large bed, curtained in silk, velvet, and gold cloth, parted to reveal fine linen sheets, pillowcases, and fur-lined blankets resting against the wall opposite the fireplace. To Gwendolen, the bed looked like a very recent addition to the room. Gwendolen walked over to the larger, cluttered table to see that it was intricately carved and had a hinged top that held maps pinned in place by tiny daggers that resembled darts. As if the empire had been reduced to parchment and precision aim, she turned to watch him. He removed the crown first, set it aside. The gesture struck her harder than the conquest of her people ever had. Without it, he was not a myth. He was simply the orchard boy, sharpened into inevitability. "You believe this was a sacrifice," he said. "It is," she replied. "For the people," he commented. "For them," she confirmed. He approached slowly. "You mistake me." "Do I?" she asked coldly. "I did not conquer Calmera for land. I have an entire continent of land." His fingers brushed her wrist. "I conquered it because you told me I would fail." The words landed with quiet force. "You did this," she whispered, the truth dawning like an unwanted sunrise. "Because I rejected you?" "No," he corrected quietly. "You demanded proof." Silence thickened between them. She searched his face for mockery and found none. Only relentless certainty. He stepped closer. She stepped back. The movement was small, almost imperceptible, but it was refusal. The space between them widened by a single pace. His jaw tightened. "Do not retreat from me now," he said softly. "I am not retreating," she replied, though her pulse betrayed her. "You are," he told her quietly. Her fingers curled at her sides. "You conquered a continent to answer a girl who laughed at you." "I conquered a continent," he said evenly, "because you required something greater than promises." She shook her head once, sharp. "You required worship." "No," he said. His voice deepened. "I required you." The words hung between them. She turned, just slightly, not fleeing, but not choosing him either. It was enough. His control thinned. He crossed the distance in 2 strides and caught her wrist, not cruelly, not violently, but firmly enough that she could not pretend indifference. "Look at me!" she resisted. For 1 breath, 2, his thumb flexed against her pulse. "Look at what you've made," he commanded. Slowly, she lifted her eyes. Something raw flickered through his composure, not rage, something far more dangerous. Need, I bled for this crown, he said. Not for power, not for fear. His hand loosened, but did not release her. For you, her breath faltered. You mistake obsession for devotion. His mouth curved faintly. You mistake inevitability for obsession. She pulled once more, testing him. He let go, deliberately. The gesture startled her more than restraint would have. If you wish to walk away again, he said quietly, stepping back, forcing distance between them, do so. He turned away from her. That was the fracture. That was the moment he gave her the illusion of freedom. The room suddenly felt too large, too empty. She could leave. He would not stop her. He would burn kingdoms for her. But he would not beg. Her gaze followed the line of his shoulders. The orchard boy had never begged. He had risen, and something in her had always wanted to see how high he would go. She crossed the space, not tentative, not yielding. She stepped in front of him before she could reconsider, placed her palm flat against his chest. The contact was deliberate, chosen. His breath caught barely, but she felt it. He had expected resistance, had braced for it, had planned for it. Instead, she reached up and seized his collar, pulling him down into a kiss. It wasn't surrender, it was hunger. Years of defiance and heat collided in that single contact. He stilled for half a heartbeat, surprised. Then his hand slid to the small of her back, firm and controlled. He deepened the kiss with patience, born of conquest. He did not rush, he savored. His other hand threaded into her hair, guiding rather than seizing, measured dominance. The heat between them thickened, reshaping the room. He broke the kiss slowly. "You surprise me," he murmured. "You expected obedience," she whispered. He chuckled. "I expected a battle. Never fear, you have one," she replied. He lifted her effortlessly and set her on the edge of the mattress, stepped between her knees. His hands mapped the severe lines of her gown, undoing clasps with deliberate care. He did not tear, he unfastened. He studied her as layers fell away, not with hunger alone too, but with recognition. "You will kneel," he said softly. "Perhaps one day, but I will never crawl," she whispered in return. Her hands gripped his shoulders, drawing him down. Pride did not vanish, it transformed. She wrapped herself around him, chose him. He moved with restrained intensity, claiming without cruelty, taking without violence. He tasted what he had waited too long to touch. The years between orchard and empire burned away in slow, deliberate motion. When she gasped his name, it was not fear, it was fire. The storm crested and broke. Silk pooled around them. The empire held its breath beyond thick walls. Sated for the moment, he lay back against the fine linen pillowcases, drawing her with him. One arm wrapped around her waist, heavy and certain. The fire had burned low. Shadows climbed the stone walls. The crown remained on the table, forgotten. Gwendolyn's breath had steadied, but her pulse had not. He studies her in silence, not with hunger now, with assessment. As if confirming something long suspected, she shifted slightly against him, testing the space. He tightened his grip, not painfully, not urgently, simply enough to remind her that movement had consequences. He brushed his lips against her temple. "You thought you came here to save them," he murmured. His thumb traced the line of her waist. "You thought this was duty?" A pause. His breath was warm at her ear. She did not answer. His fingers traced slow patterns against her bare shoulder. "I did not conquer your kingdom for land." A pause. His fingers slid beneath her chin, turning her face toward his. "Not rough, unavoidable. I conquered it because you told me I would never rise. I conquered it for you." His gaze lowered to hers, dark and unwavering. Her lips parted. He did not kiss her, though his eyes brushed their softness. He let the words land. "You forged me." He tightened his hold just enough to anchor her. "And now you will stand beside what you made." A breath. His gaze lowered, dark and certain. "You will not hide in prayer." Another beat. "You will not endure me." His hand tightened on her hip, subtle, claiming. His mouth brushed her ear. "You will burn with me." Silence filled the chamber. Heavy, intimate, unavoidable. Then, softer, but far more dangerous. "I was never beneath you." His eyes held hers without apology. "You were always the summit." He rose from the bed slowly, reaching for the crown on the table. She watched him, measured him. He did not place it back on his own head. He turned and set it gently in her hands, not as a gift, as a burden. "As empress," he said quietly, "you will temper me." Her fingers tightened around the cold steel. "And if I fail?" she asked. A faint smile touched his mouth. "You will not." He stepped closer, brushing his lips against her ear. "I have already begun shaping the next border." Her breath stilled. "For you?" she asked. His voice dropped, intimate and absolute. "For us." A pause, then softer. "The continent was only the first proof." Epilogue. Her world had already bent, and she no longer looked away from her destiny. The girl who once stood beneath orchard boughs and laughed at a boy with impossible ambition was gone. In her place stood a woman who understood the cost of demanding greatness. She had asked him to prove himself. He had answered with an empire. Beyond the fortress walls, banners snapped in the wind over lands won in her name. Within the chamber, the emperor watched her not as a prize, but as purpose. And somewhere, far beyond crowns and continents, the memory of sun-warmed apples lingered like the first spark against dry kindling. He had told her once, I presume correctly. This time she did not laugh, because now she understood. Some empires are born from greed, others from a single refusal beneath the fruit of summer trees.
Please like, subscribe, and share to support more of these stories.